It was on a bitterly cold afternoon when Jack Carter, a retired soldier, came home ahead of schedule with his faithful German Shepherd Rex padding loyally by his side. Thick snowflakes fell relentlessly, cloaking the world in a hush of white. But the scene that greeted him as he swung open the gate of his modest home stopped him more coldly than the winter chill ever could. His 5-year-old daughter, Emily, disabled, and shivering, stood barefoot in a tub filled with icy water. Her delicate frame trembled beneath the harsh words of the woman who was supposed to be her protector. In that heart-wrenching moment, the soldier's armor faded away, leaving only a father whose silent grief tore through his soul. What unfolded next would change everything forever. Stay with us until the very end to witness how love's warmth can break through even the fiercest of storms. And if you believe no child should ever endure pain alone, subscribe and walk alongside us on this path of bravery and compassion. May your day be gentle and your spirit kind. The midday sky over Raven Hill was the milky shade of quiet, heavy and motionless as snow floated in endless soft curtains over the weathered wooden homes that lined the narrow street. The still air was pierced only by the creak of frozen branches and the distant drone of a snow plow slowly making its way up the hillside. Winter had seeped deep into the town's bones, chilling every breath, turning it into a visible cloud. Behind one such house, in a small yard fenced with chipped white boards, a faint child's voice quivered with the gusting wind, so fragile it could have been mistaken for a bird caught in the icy air. Emily Carter, just 6 years old, was a delicate figure in a worn beige dress dotted with small polka dots, its edges threadbare from past seasons. Her arms were bare, skin ghostly pale against the bitter cold, and the faint metallic shimmer of her prosthetic leg caught the light as she fought to keep her balance on the slick, frozen ground. Her face was small and shaped like a heart, made for smiles now long forgotten. Her voice was soft when she spoke, laced with both fear and politeness, as if each word needed permission to be heard. "Please, Mother, could I have new crutches? This one hurts when I walk." Vanessa, her stepmother, stood by the back door, wrapped tightly in a long gray cardigan. In her early 30s, tall with blonde hair pulled back tightly, and lips that seldom curved with warmth. Her beauty was sharp, with a coldness flickering behind her eyes. She turned from the sink, the coffee cup still steaming in her hand, looking at Emily as if she were nothing more than a burden. "You think life's easy, don't you?" she said, her voice heavy with bitterness rather than kindness. The cup slammed down hard on the counter. "You just want people to feel sorry for you. If you want to walk like everyone else, then first learn to endure the cold." Emily couldn't comprehend. Before she could even ask a question, Vanessa gripped her small wrist and yanked her toward the yard. The woman's face burned with a rage, or maybe something older resentment that had been fed quietly and was now rotting within. She lifted the lid off a plastic tub filled with water left out all night. Thin sheets of ice clung to the surface. Without hesitation, Vanessa lifted Emily and placed her into the frozen water, the splash ringing out as Emily gasped in shock. "Stand up straight," Vanessa barked over the brutal wind. "If you want to be strong, you have to learn to bear the cold." "This is how you learn," he said, as the biting cold pricked the child's skin like sharp needles. She tried to lift her leg, but the prosthetic slipped on the slick, icy surface beneath her. Her breath came in quick, shallow puffs, visible like smoke in the frigid air. "I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry," she murmured, her voice barely cutting through the trembling that shook her body. For a moment, silence enveloped them, broken only by the gentle descent of snowflakes and the hollow stirring of water in the tub. Vanessa stood with folded arms, her gaze fixed firmly on the small figure shivering before her. Somewhere in that still quiet, the distant drone of an engine sliced through the air, a steady hum, edging closer to the gate. The unfamiliar sound punctuated the calm neighborhood, catching Vanessa's attention and pulling her head sideways in distraction. Outside the house, the Jeep came to a halt, its tires crunching harshly on the snow. A man stepped out, broad-shouldered, tall, dressed in a field jacket, the earthy shade of moss, and boots darkened from travel through slush and mud. His dark brown hair was streaked with silver at the temples, his face etched with lines carved by weariness born from too many sleepless nights and harsh truths. Jack Carter had spent half his life mastering disciplined silence and unyielding duty, yet none of that steeled him for what awaited beyond his own gate. At his side, Rex trotted, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a sable back and warm tan fur coloring his chest and legs. The dog's amber eyes flickered between Jack and the gate with intense alertness. Jack reached the gate just as the faintest whimper of a child drifted on the wind. He froze, hands grasping the latch, heart pounding hard. Then that sound came again, a small, fractured voice breaking apart with each breath. Without hesitation, Jack pushed the gate wide open. The sight before him knocked the air from his lungs. His daughter stood bare-armed, her hair slick with melting snow, submerged in an icy tub with her prosthetic leg trembling beneath the cold water, while Vanessa hovered overhead shouting words as cutting and sharp as the frigid wind. For a fleeting moment, the world tightened around that haunting image, snow, so white lips tinged blue, a child too frozen to even cry. Then, a deep primal roar surged from within him. Jack's voice thundered across the yard. Emily spun in surprise. The dog barked fiercely, once paws tearing into the snow as he lunged forward. Jack closed the distance in an instant, lifting Emily from the ice-cold water, with one arm pulling her tight beneath his jacket to warm her with his own body heat. The shock of her frigid skin against him made him recoil slightly. My God. He breathed, his voice cracking with raw emotion. She's freezing! Vanessa's expression faltered, confidence crumbling into guilt. Jack, it's not what it looks like, she stammered, hands raised in defense. She was just playing. I didn't mean... Jack's gaze locked onto hers, burning with the cool fury of a soldier who had witnessed cruelty cloaked in false orders too many times before. Playing, he echoed softly, each word measured deadly precise. You call this a game? His voice remained calm, but razor-sharp, a quiet intensity that forced Vanessa to step back. Rex positioned himself between them for bristling, a low growl vibrating through the stillness. Turning back to his daughter, Jack pressed her close. Emily's lips quivered, eyes half closed, her voice a fragile whisper against his chest. Dad, it's cold! He swallowed hard emotion thick in his throat constricted, words caught in the grip of his heart. I know, my love. I'm right here now. His breath formed a mist in the frigid air as his gaze lifted once more. No one will lay a hand on her again, he said with steady resolve, each word laden with unyielding finality. Without waiting for an answer, he strode through the swirling snow toward the jeep. Rex circled once, then leapt into the back seat with poised urgency. Jack eased Emily into the passenger seat, cocooning her beneath the shelter of his coat, his trembling hands testing her pulse, betraying more fear than he could admit. The engine growled to life, and his headlights tore through the thick white haze. Vanessa lingered at the gate, her silhouette shrinking beneath the relentless cascade of snow, her voice swallowed by the biting wind. On the road out of Raven Hill, the storm only tightened its grip yet within the confines of the jeep. Only Jack's measured breathing and the quiet whimpers of a half-slumbering child filled the space. Rex sat vigilant alongside them, his eyes locked forward, ears alert to every whisper the night carried. Jack glanced into the rearview mirror. The house receded behind them, the gates swinging shut with the uneven rhythm of a faltering heartbeat. His fingers brushed a stray lock of hair from Emily's brow. We're heading to the hospital, he murmured softly, though her fading consciousness might never catch the words. And I promise you, no harm will ever touch you again. The road ahead twisted beside the frozen river, glinting faintly beneath a pale winter sun. For the first time, in what felt like forever, a new feeling stirred within Jack, not fury, not dread, but a fierce love so powerful it both frightened and fueled him. As the jeep vanished into the endless white, the world behind them slipped into silence once more. the wind erasing every trace of footprints from the yard, as if the very hand of winter sought to conceal the pain that had unfolded there. By the time Jack carried Emily through the sliding doors of Raven Hill General Hospital, the snow had softened into a muddy slush. The sharp scent of antiseptic pierced the chilled corridor, cold and clinical, while fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting the space in a pale, sterile glow. Nurses moved briskly from room to room, their voices low, a hushed symphony in a place where anguish and hope coexist beneath the same roof. Jack's boots left dark trails of melting snow on the polished floor, his coat heavy with moisture, his arms still cradling the fragile frame that stirred only faintly against his chest. Rex followed silently, fur-dripping paws soundless on the tile, eyes locked unwaveringly on Emily, as if his very breath was tied to hers. Dr. Clara Monroe awaited them halfway down the hall. She was in her late 60s, silver hair cropped neatly beneath a pale blue cap, her face etched with the serene strength of one who had witnessed life's most delicate moments. Her soft gray eyes met Jack and Emily's with immediate compassionate understanding. Without a word of questioning, she motioned toward a nearby room. "Right this way," she said softly. Inside the room was warm, illuminated by a lone lamp casting a gentle glow over the bed. Jack gently laid Emily down, reluctant to release his hold even for an instant. Clara's fingers, though worn with age, moved with precise care, checking pulse skin temperature and examining the faint bruises marked on the child's arms and legs. "Severe hypothermia," she whispered almost to herself. "And these bruises, they didn't happen today." Jack sank heavily into the chair beside the bed, its scrape against the floor breaking the heavy silence. The room's warmth was powerless against the tempest raging inside him. He fixed his gaze on his daughter's fragile face. Lips pale and trembling softly, one little hand lay still atop the blanket's edge. For a man seasoned by war who'd carried fallen brothers from flames and ruins, this moment cut deeper than any battlefield wounds. The wounds of others had always been something he could heal with strength orders or prayer, but this it was his own child, broken by a cruelty he had failed to stop. He reached out, wrapping her fragile hand within his. It was icy cold, impossibly so, the chill seeping into his veins like guilt made flesh. After a brief pause, Clara returned, clutching her clipboard to her chest. Her tone was gentle but grave. "She's stable now," she said, "but these bruises tell a story of repeated torment. Weeks, maybe months. Someone hurt her frequently." "Mr. Carter." Jack raised his head slowly, his eyes shadowed by disbelief that had hardened into simmering fury. The doctor held his gaze. "We'll record everything," she assured him. "But right now she needs calm, not anger." He gave a slight nod, jaw clenched tightly, muscles twitching as if each breath was a battle for control. "Thank you," he murmured, voice low and heavy with unsaid pain. Rex lay near the foot of the bed, his chin resting gently on his paws. The dog's amber eyes tracked every movement without blinking. When Emily shifted, Rex lifted his head, letting out a soft, comforting rumble, as if reminding her she wasn't alone in this fight. Jack reached down, brushing his hand through Rex's fur, almost absent-mindedly drawing strength from that living warmth. For a long moment, the only sounds were the steady pulse of the heart monitor and the faint ticking of the clock, each second stretching out like eternity. Then the door creaked open. The sharp scent of perfume floated in before the voice followed. "Jack." Vanessa's voice was soft, as though simply speaking his name could undo her deeds. She stood framed in the doorway, hair damp from melting snow, her coat drawn, tight eyes flickering warily towards the bed before looking away. "I came as soon as I heard," she whispered, voice trailing off before the sentence could find its end. Jack rose slowly, deliberately. The hardness in his expression made the sterile room feel smaller, colder. "You should leave," he said plainly. Vanessa blinked, mouth opening in shocked disbelief. "Jack, please! I was only trying to—" He cut her off, quiet, but trembling beneath the surface. "A child needs love," he said, "not lessons taught with ice." The words dropped heavy, heavier than any shout ever could. Vanessa's eyes filled not with sorrow, but with a fear that blooms only when control slips from a hand that once abused it. Without a word more, she turned and left. When the door shut behind her, the air felt cleaner somehow. Jack sank back down, shoulders slumped, hand returning to Emily's. A faint blush was returning to her cheeks, a slight warmth beneath the surface, but her breath remained shallow and fragile. Then a nurse entered, a young woman named Megan, cheeks flushed from the cold, her voice steady but kind. "Mr. Carter?" she said, holding a small device in her palm. "We found this on her wrist. It's a kid's smartwatch. Looks like she tried to send a message before you got here." She tapped the screen, and the message glowed softly unsent, but saved Mom hit me. "I'm scared." Jack stared at the words, so small and innocent, yet carrying a weight of pain no child should bear. His gaze fixed on its blinking cursor at the edge of the unfinished line, a flicker of fear frozen in time. He exhaled slowly, the sound more growl than sigh. "Thank you," he whispered, and the nurse nodded before slipping away, leaving him alone once more. Silence deepened in the room. Outside, snow pressed gently against the window, blurring the world into a soft white veil. He rose, walked to the window, his reflection faint in the glass, still standing like a soldier, but the weight on his shoulders heavier than any armor. Beyond, the courtyard lay empty, save for faint footprints of nurses crossing between wings, slowly being swallowed by snow. Memories flooded him, years spent away, unanswered letters, birthdays passed, and the quiet he had mistaken for peace. His breath fogged the glass. "If justice won't find her," he whispered almost to himself, "then I'll bring it to her." Behind him, Rex shifted ears, flicking, sensing the fierce resolve in his master's voice. Emily stirred softly in her sleep, a faint sound escaping her lips. Was it a sigh or a dream? It was impossible to tell. Jack turned back, his expression softening. He stepped toward the bed, laying his hand gently over her blanket. "Rest, my sweet girl," he murmured. "No one will ever hurt you again." His voice cracked on the last word. He stayed by her side until the gray dawn softened into the muted amber of evening shadows folding quietly over the floor. Beyond the door, the hospital hummed with quiet life wheels. Rolled pages turned, doors closed softly. But inside this room, time held its breath. The snow fell on indifferent, endless, while a father guarded his daughter and a loyal dog kept a silent, steadfast watch at their feet. Deep within Jack's chest, beneath the weariness and ache, a steady, cold resolve began to blaze, as certain as the winter storm outside. He had witnessed too much cruelty in the world to ever let it touch her again. Dawn broke slowly over Raven Hill, pale and quiet, the kind of morning that veils peace after a raging storm. Jack stood by the hospital window, the world outside iced in frost, every rooftop sparkling like the town itself was holding its breath. Emily slept deeply for the first time in days, her small chest rising beneath thick blankets. Rex lay at the foot of her bed, head resting softly on his paws, eyes half closed but alert, even in rest. The peaceful rhythm of her breathing mellowed the unrest stirring inside him. Yet beneath that delicate calm, Jack's thoughts were already beyond the hospital walls. Questions buried beneath the snow truths that reeked of betrayal. He knew the scars marring Emily's body were only part of the wounds needing to be healed. Quietly after sunrise, he slipped away, leaving a note for the nurse and casting one last glance at his daughter's pale face. The streets remained empty as he reached the town square. Snow crunched sharply beneath his boots, breaking the morning silence. The sheriff's station stood at the corner of Main and Elm, its brick walls dusted in white, the flag fluttering stiffly in the cold wind. Jack stepped inside, warmth washing over him, mingling with faint scents of burnt coffee and old paper. Behind the front desk sat Deputy Mason Cole, a man in his late 30s with a strong jaw and close-cropped dark hair, and the quiet resilience of a man who had endured too much, yet still held fast to the hope of good in this world. Mason glanced up, a slow, knowing smile spreading across his face. "Jack Carter," he said, rising to clasp his hand. Never thought I'd see you walking back through these doors so soon." Their handshake carried the weight of countless unspoken memories, sandstorms, whipping gunfire, echoing a loyalty forged where death had once lingered nearby. Mason's sharp blue eyes caught the tension knotting Jack's shoulders. "What happened?" Jack didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled from his jacket a folded photo, Emily's hospital wristband, and the faint bruises just above it. Mason's jaw tightened. "God," he muttered under his breath. Jack spoke in a voice both soft and resolute. "I need your help. Something's off. It's not just what she did to Emily. I think there's a deeper truth beneath it all." "Property money?" Mason inquired, nodding once. "All right then, let's get to the bottom of this." That afternoon, snow began to fall again, soft, steady, cloaking the world's tracks in white. Jack steered his truck back toward home Rex riding shotgun. The house sat cold and silent, windows dark yard, frozen in quiet. He parked some distance away, careful to keep their presence unnoticed. Rex leapt out nose instantly to the wind muscles taut with unwavering purpose. "Find it," Jack murmured, voice barely above a whisper, and the dog set off circling the house. His nose traced scents invisible to human senses, a world hushed, save for the crunch of paws in snow and occasional creaks of swaying branches. Beyond the barn, where the old chicken coop leaned nearly surrendered to decay, Rex halted, tail stiff, ears keen. Jack stepped forward, brushing frost from the weathered wood. Rex pawed at loose ground, then scratched at a board near the corner. Beneath it, wrapped in torn paper, lay something out of place in that frozen earth, a bundle of documents, edges warped from damp, but holding firm. Jack crouched careful with gloved hands as he unfolded the package. Inside, legal papers bore stamps, signatures, and dates. His breath caught at the name that filled the header. Merritt Hall, an infamous real estate tycoon from 2 counties over, known for deals as slick as the ice covering the roads. Deals cloaked in legitimacy, but laced with ruin. Below that, Vanessa Hall Carter's signature rested deliberate and practiced. Jack felt a chill, colder than the winter air, seep into his bones. Folding the documents, he tucked them securely inside his jacket. Giving Rex a firm pat, he whispered, "Good job, partner." Rex wagged his tail once the fur along his neck still raised, as if sharing in the solemn weight of their discovery. Back in the truck, Jack spread the papers across the dashboard. Beneath the property deeds were letters. One in Vanessa's flowing script grabbed his attention. "Once he's gone for good," it read, "the land and assets revert back to my name. Hall will finalize the deed." By the time Jack returned to Mason's office, night had draped Ravenhill in shadow, the town's faint lights flickering through a thin veil of mist. Mason sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up the computer screen, casting a pale glow on his face. "You were right," he said as Jack entered. "Hall's been caught in fraudulent transfers before. Vanessa's name appeared on one of his pending deeds 3 months ago." Jack leaned forward against the desk, his face unreadable. "They used me," he said quietly. He said, looking up as Jack stepped inside. "Hall's been flagged before for shady transfers. Vanessa's name popped up in one of his pending deals 3 months ago." Jack pressed his hands on the desk, his expression guarded. "They used me," he stated flatly. "While I was overseas," Mason nodded gravely, "they did more than that. They tried to erase you from every part of your life." He swiveled the monitor to face Jack. A database filled with transactions. Hall's name appeared again and again across countless counties. The same signature pattern, the same silent theft. Mason printed the files, sliding the stack across the desk toward him. "This is enough to spark an investigation," he said. "But we'll need direct proof, something that links her voice to the deal." Jack's eyes drifted toward the phone resting between them. "Then I'll get it," he said, standing up and slipping his gloves back on. "She talks too much when she thinks she's already won." Mason looked at him, a mixture of worry and respect, dimming his features. "Be careful, Jack. You've already survived hell. Don't go back there." Jack's reply was quiet, but resolute. "I'm already there." Later that night, beneath a sky heavy with falling snow, Jack parked a few blocks away from Vanessa's rental home. The faint glow of lights flickered behind the curtains. He sat in silence, the recorder ready, his breath steady and controlled. Rex rested his head gently on Jack's knee, his amber eyes shimmering softly in the low light. The phone rang twice before Vanessa answered. Her voice sounded bright, nearly cheerful, like someone who had already buried the cruelty behind her own actions. Jack kept his tone calm and steady. "I heard Hall stopped by last week," he said casually. A pause, then her laugh, a sharp, brittle sound. "He did. The deal's almost sealed. When that soldier finally comes home, everything he thought was his will already belonged to me." Her words dropped like poison wrapped in silk. Jack ended the call slowly, letting the silence that followed settle heavy inside the truck. The recorder blinked red, simple, undeniable proof. He sat still for a long moment, staring out through the windshield as snow gathered softly on the glass. The world outside blurred into white, but the truth had never been clearer. Vanessa's betrayal wasn't just harsh, it was a theft of everything he'd built, everything his daughter was supposed to inherit. Rex emitted a low growl, sensing the shift in his master's steady breath. Jack reached down, scratching behind the dog's ear. "We've got what we need," he whispered. "Now we finish this right." The drive back into town was slow headlights cutting through thick sheets of snow. Jack stopped once atop the ridge overlooking the frozen river. Beneath the ice, the water still moved hidden, but alive. He stood there quietly for a moment, listening to the soft creak of the frozen surface. Betrayal, he realized, was much the same, silent until it shattered everything. When he climbed back into the truck, his eyes were steady, his voice low and fierce. "They took my name, my home, and they hurt my child," he said softly. "That ends now." The storm came before dawn, sweeping through the valley like a wave of white fire. Roads vanished beneath heavy snow fences blurred out of view, and the trees bent low under the crushing weight of ice. Inside the small police outpost near Raven Hill Ridge, the phone rang once, sharp and urgent, Mason Cole's voice tightening as he listened. The nurse at the hospital on the other end was trembling. Her words came in gasps. Emily Carter was gone, her bed empty, the window left wide open, and fresh tire tracks already fading beneath the falling snow. By the time Mason called Jack, the storm had swallowed the first mile. Jack stayed silent for several long seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but there was a weight in it that made even the wind still. "She took her," he said firmly. "I'm going after them." Moments later, the roar of an engine shattered the blizzard's silence. Jack's battered Jeep fought through the drifts, tires clawing desperately at the frozen, slick road. Next to him, Rex pressed against the dashboard, breath fogging the glass, ears twitching sharply toward the howling wind. The tempest roared like a wild beast, hammering the windshield with desperate fury. Jack's knuckles whitened on the wheel, his mind razor-focused on one mission: find Emily. That thought echoed with every turn, every skid of the tires. He reached out for the wool scarf left on the passenger seat, a small pink one worn at the edges but still faintly scented with lavender. "Emily's," he murmured, holding it out to Rex. "Find her?" he whispered. The dog's nostrils flared twice, a low growl rising deep in his chest. The trail was there. They threaded along the narrow county road, cutting toward the shadowed mountains. The snow thickening so much it blurred the line between earth and sky. The Jeep's headlights barely pierced the whirling white, revealing only fragmented glimpses of the storm branches whipping wildly, drifts collapsing unevenly. The ghost-like silhouettes of telephone poles bowed and bent beneath the furious wind. Rex growled low, nose pressed tight against the glass, then barked once, sharp and certain. Jack leaned closer, squinting through the storm's veil. Faint tire tracks peeled away from the main path into the edge of the forest. Heart hammering, he swerved after them, wheels sliding, nerves stretched taut like drumheads. Somewhere in that storm, Vanessa drove blindly desperate, and Emily, his little girl, was trapped in that car. By the time he neared the foothills, the blizzard had turned savage. Snow lashed sideways, slicing his face even through the cracked window. His vision was nearly swallowed by white. Still, the tracks ahead remained clear for the moment. "Hold on," he breathed, as though Emily could hear him through the storm's roar. Rex barked sharply, head-whipping toward the thickening forest at the right. Through the swirling snow emerged the faint outline of a dark vehicle, its hazard lights blinking weak, wrapped in ice. Jack slammed on the brakes. The Jeep skidded sideways, stopping just yards away. The other car was buried deep in a snowbank, its rear wheels spinning helplessly. The driver's door swung open, and Vanessa stumbled out, hair plastered to her face, one gloved hand gripping a pistol, the other dragging Emily by the arm. Emily's muffled cry was swept away by the wind. Her coat hung loose, her small frame trembling. Jack stepped into the raging storm, boots sinking deep into the snow, voice steady even amid the chaos. "Let her go, Vanessa." She spun sharply, eyes wild with frost and fear. "Stay back," she screamed. "You won't take anything from me. Not her, not this home, not my life." The gun's barrel wavered slightly, catching dull gray light. Jack took a slow step forward, his breath forming clouds between them. "It's over," he said quietly. "You've done enough." Her tense laugh broke into a sob. "If you come any closer, I'll shoot." The world seemed to freeze, the storm itself holding its breath. Jack's pulse slowed. He saw Emily's face. Eyes wide, lips tinged blue, tiny fingers clawing at the coat sleeve. He moved then, swift and sure, closing the gap before doubt could take hold. The gunshot cracked sharp hollow, but swallowed up by the raging wind. Agony tore through his shoulder as the bullet grazed him, spinning him nearly halfway around. In the same instant, Rex sprang from behind, muscles coiled like a spring, a swift shadow of black and tan slicing through the snow. The force sent Vanessa staggering backward, the gun clattering to the ground. She collapsed into the drift with a cry, Rex towering over her teeth, bared fiercely, a deep primal growl rolling across the ridge. Jack faltered, but steadied himself, clutching his arm tightly. His blood warmed, the frigid air slipping through his jacket. He dropped to his knees beside Emily, who clung to him with a sob that shattered something deep inside him. "It's okay," he murmured, pulling her close. "You're safe now, sweetheart. I'm right here." She buried her face in his chest, her tiny hands trembling as he wrapped his coat around her. Behind them, Rex barked sharply, almost as if summoning help. In the distance, the faint but growing wail of sirens wove through the wind. Mason was arriving. The flashing red lights cut through the storm moments later, painting the snow with pulses of urgent color. Mason and two officers moved swiftly, their forms blurred by the swirling white. Jack Mason called out, rushing forward. He knelt beside him, eyes flicking from the blood-staining Jack's arm to the trembling child in his lap. "She's going to be okay," Jack croaked. "She's safe now." The other officers helped Vanessa to her feet. Tear-streaked and frost-melted, her face was hollow, drained of fight, replaced by the empty gaze of someone who finally saw the wreckage she'd caused. The clang of handcuffs locked around her wrists was swallowed by the howling wind. Mason steadied Jack as he helped him up. "You need a medic," he said, but Jack shook his head. "She does first," he said, nodding toward Emily. The little girl clung to him tighter, refusing to let go. Mason's expression softened. From his coat he pulled a thermal blanket, wrapping it gently around her shoulders. "You did good, Jack," he said quietly. "You brought her back." Jack didn't respond. He simply looked down at his daughter, brushing snow from her hair, his breath shaking somewhere between fatigue and relief. As the sirens faded and the storm began to relent, the world around them seemed to exhale. The silent mountains stretched endlessly, their peaks swallowed by gray skies. Rex sat calmly beside Jack, his tail-curled eyes locked on the horizon. The sting from Jack's shoulder wound barely registered. Emily's small hand grasped his sleeve. her warmth seeping through the chill. For the first time in months, perhaps years, he allowed himself to finally breathe. "I'm here now," he whispered into her hair. "You're safe." His blood darkened the snow beneath them, but it no longer mattered. The battle, the storm, the pain all had led to this moment. A father, his child, and the steadfast dog who never stopped racing through the cold to bring them back together. The rescue team loaded Vanessa into a cruiser, the red lights flickering against her pale face. Mason lingered a moment longer, watching as Jack lifted Emily into his arms, beginning the slow walk toward the ambulance. The snowfall had softened now, flakes settling gently in his hair, melting against the heat of his skin. Rex's paws followed close behind, steady and loyal as ever. When they reached the roadside, Jack glanced back once more toward the mountains. The endless stretch of white no longer felt harsh or unforgiving. For the first time, it gleamed pure and inviting. Inside the ambulance, warmth gently returned. Emily's head rested softly against Jack's shoulder, her breathing steady and calm, while Rex rested quietly at their feet, eyes heavy yet watchful. Mason eased the door closed, his voice muffled beyond the glass. "Let's bring them home." As the vehicle rolled forward, the storm retreated behind them, leaving only the soft murmur of snow drifting across the highway, a hush that felt like forgiveness itself. The snow slowly melted, revealing shimmering puddles that caught the morning's first light, and the town of Ravenhill finally breathed out after a winter that had taken far too much from all of its people. The hospital stood quietly on the hill's edge, its windows fogged by the breath of spring struggling to bloom again. Inside a recovery room, Jack Carter sat by the window, his right arm cradled in a sling. The surgery had been a success. The bullet had spared the bone, but years of carrying duty and heartbreak wore deeper scars beneath the surface. His shoulder ached less now, though some nights still burned sharp when the wind picked up. He had learned to accept it. To him, pain was a reminder, a sign that he was still here, still feeling, still fighting for the fragile heartbeat sleeping in the bed beside him. Emily lay beneath a thin blanket, sunlight flowing softly across her hair. Bruises had faded, replaced by tender pink, where healing had begun. The doctor said time would be needed for her recovery, but she had already started to amaze them all. Each morning she pushed herself further, sitting up just a bit longer, stretching her limits as her small hands gripped the bed rails with quiet resolve. She no longer shed tears when walking on her prosthetic. Instead, she gritted her teeth, took a deep breath, then another, as if sheer will alone could warm her spirit. When Jack smiled, her eyes met his with a steady gaze, and she said, "I'm getting stronger, Daddy." And in that moment, he believed every word. Deputy Mason Cole came by that week carrying a cardboard box wrapped in brown paper. He was out of uniform for once, wearing a cozy flannel shirt and worn jeans embodying the calm of someone who'd finally slept through the night. He placed the box on the bed and cleared his throat, a bit awkward. "Figured she'd like these," he said, glancing at Emily. She eagerly tore through the wrapping and gasped. Inside lay a pair of sleek new crutches, polished aluminum, bright and light. Each handle wrapped in soft leather dyed a gentle sky blue. "They're light," Mason added, rubbing the back of his neck. "Custom made." Thought the color matched her courage. Emily laughed, bright and fearless. "Thank you, Mr. Mason," she whispered, clutching a crutch close like it was a gift from a different world. The next morning when she tried them out, the hospital halls echoed with the gentle taps of her steps. On the tile measured steady and full of pride. Jack followed close behind, his good arm poised to catch her if she stumbled, though she never did. Rex walked alongside them, head tilted, tail low and sweeping, matching her pace perfectly. The nurses paused to watch their smiles, quiet but full of hope. Every few steps, Emily paused, reaching down to stroke Rex's head, before moving forward again, sunlight framing her small, determined figure as she went. In that simple rhythm of movement, metal breath, and unwavering faith, the world seemed to reassemble itself just a little more each day. Outside, the town moved quietly forward. Merritt Hall's arrest hit the newspapers, his photo printed below the headline. Real estate magnate charged with fraud and conspiracy. He looked diminished in the image. His flawless hair tousled his pride buried beneath a scowl. Vanessa's trial followed soon after. The courtroom smelled faintly of dust and bitter coffee, her face pale under the harsh lighting. When the verdict came, guilty of child abuse and fraud, Jack wasn't there. He didn't need to be. He'd learned that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks softly in quiet victories, a door closing, a child smiling once again, peace reclaiming what had been lost. Weeks slipped by. Jack signed his retirement papers after 2 decades on the force. No ceremony, no flags, just a simple signature and a deep exhale of relief. He bought a small wooden house on the town's edge, creaky floors, and a porch facing the sunrise. It wasn't much, but it held warmth. More importantly, it offered room for a child to grow and a dog to run free. On their first morning in the new home, Emily traced her fingers on the window glass and whispered, "It feels like home." Rex let out a single bark as if to confirm. Jack stood behind her arm, still stiff from surgery, knowing it was the truest thing he'd heard in years. Life found softer rhythms. Mornings arrived with the scent of coffee and the sound of Rex's paws lightly padding across the floors. Emily's laughter floated through the small rooms like birdsong. Sometimes Mason dropped by with groceries or updates from the station, staying just long enough to share a story and a smile. The past still lingered, but no longer haunted them. It became the quiet backdrop to something better. Jack spent hours teaching Emily how to read the world, just as he once read maps with attention to the small things: the wind, the hue of the sunlight, the twitch of a dog's ears before a storm. She listened intently, treasuring every word. On winter's final morning, the air held that rare stillness before spring's first thaw. The yard behind their home was cloaked in a delicate layer of snow, sparkling under the pale sun. Emily stood in the middle of it, wrapped in her blue coat and wool hat, gripping her new crutches, their shine catching the light. Jack leaned against the porch railing, one shoulder bandaged beneath his jacket, his face softened by pride. Rex raced in joyful circles around her, sending snowflakes flying with every paw. Emily drew a deep breath and stepped forward. Her movements steady and graceful now, each step marking the end of cold days and the beginning of hope. "Look, Daddy," she called, cheeks flushed from the crisp air. "I can do it on my own." Jack smiled, eyes shining and wet. "I know, sweetheart," he said softly, "but I'll always be just behind you." She turned her smile wide and fearless, and for a moment sunlight caught in her hair, making her glow against the snow. Rex bounded past her, skidding to a halt and shaking frost from his coat. Emily's laughter rang out, filling the silent hills with a sound that felt like a cherished memory in the making. A father witnessing his daughter rise strong once more, a faithful dog standing watch by their side, and the world finally starting to mend. The breeze carried the faint aroma of pine mingled with thawing earth, a herald of a new season's promise. Jack drew a deep breath, the ache in his shoulder softening as he let the air out slowly. The battle raging within him had finally stilled. His gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the sun blazed gold above Raven Hill, and he murmured softly, as if speaking to the wind, "We made it." The snow melted away at their feet, seeping into the ground, nourishing the grass that would soon bloom again. And there, in that small, forgotten town, 3 souls stood united, man, child, and dog, not as survivors of the harsh winter, but as witnesses to the dawn of spring. They had journeyed through shadows, through fear and grief, and emerged to find the light waiting just beyond. The storm had passed, leaving behind something rare and pure: love that survives, faith that restores, and the quiet courage to start anew. Often, the smallest, softest gestures carry the deepest significance. Not the loud declarations, not the clamor, but the steady hands that hold tight when the world grows cold. Somewhere out there, a father still watches silently by a hospital bed. A child still holds on to belief in kindness, and a devoted dog still stands guard beneath falling snowflakes. This world is filled with souls like theirs, silent hearts, who give protect and love without ever demanding anything back. Their stories seldom make headlines, yet they shape the fabric of our world in ways no one can fully grasp. If this tale stirred something deep inside you, share it with someone who still believes in the power of goodness. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because sometimes your words are the very light someone else desperately needs. And if you feel called, stay with us. Subscribe to hear more tales of bravery, compassion, and the quiet grace that continues to walk among us. May God bless you and keep your heart tender wherever you find yourself tonight.